more than ever, I feel like the NFT space, as vast as it is just making its own rules up now. And I'm excited by that because it's the way it should be.
Hello, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I'm Carly Riley, and this is the weekly recap episode, but we have a special guest joining me for the recap episode. I want to give a big welcome to, should I call you SuperMassive?
You can call me SuperMassive. You can call me whatever you want, really.
I feel like how people know
that
you.
That annoying English guy. That's fine.
Sir, yeah. Dude with the face and the accent. SuperMassive is what I will call him because that's how I was first introduced to you. SuperMassive is here. SuperMassive from the Defiant. For folks who don't know, he's an incredible content creator, producer, CEO. I don't know. You tell us.
Well, I'm definitely not the CEO. That would
but
slightly knock Cami, my boss at the Defiant. Yes, I'm the head of video and multimedia at the Defiant, which is kind of a loose term, but basically, I make videos and films. I try to make more films than videos these days, but it's tough. And we talk about DeFi, but we also cover the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. But DeFi has kind of become the tip of the spear in terms of regulatory pressures and stablecoins and all these other things. So literally DeFi, as I see it, it's become the engine room of the Metaverse and NFTs and everything now. So I have to be plugged into all of that, plus DAOs, plus, I mean, it's insane. But there's a story every day,
you just
everywhere.
don't sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your content is fantastic. If anybody isn't familiar with SuperMassive's videos at the Defiant, I highly recommend checking them out. I will say, I think the first video of yours that I watched maybe was the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It was like an explanation of why the Bored Ape Yacht Club got big and like why it's relevant. And I think it's excellent and folks should check it out if they haven't seen it. And if you have like that friend who's like, what the F is this ape thing? It's stupid. That's an excellent video to show people because I think it really captures the why this is culturally relevant.
Well, it's funny. This space in general, when you look at it, doesn't have the greatest content creators. It has a lot of very samey content creators that produce the kind of content that will make people think, okay, this guy knows what to buy next. And there's very little of the kind of chronicling of the space. So what happened and why did it happen? More kind of historical stuff that you would look back on in 5 years and go, oh my God, I can't believe that this happened. There's very little of that. It tends to be very day by day. So it wasn't intentional, but I feel like the thing that I'm best at is taking a story and really bringing it to life and telling it to you in a way that you go, oh, okay. And what we try and do, which isn't always feasible, is we try and make it entertaining. Because I spent 20 years as a filmmaker. I was doing music videos and I shot a feature film. I just love filming stuff and telling stories visually. Blockchain is not visual, it's code. It's impossible to visualize. So you always end up using these metaphors. You have food, you have props. So we always try and bring some kind of visual element in that makes it come alive for people. Otherwise, it literally is you're just talking about formulas. And that's so not interesting. So when NFTs came along, I was like, oh my God, thank God. I can actually see something and we can look at it and we can have an argument about whether it's any good or not. And of course, all of that's exploded. But that moment in time when Bored Apes arrived, there was so much less than there is now. It's amazing looking at the glut of stuff that we have in front of us to pick apart and evaluate and then measure against what's happened before and go, oh, actually, we were totally wrong about the artistic merits of Cool Cats versus Bored Apes. Now we have to kind of judge things by the Azuki standard, and that's what we're going to do. Yeah. It's like, oh, God, make it stop. Like, armistice, 48-hour armistice, no drops. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh, we should do. I also love we should do that. And we should do, I think Betty NFT tweeted this at one point. Like, I am once again calling for a universal NFT time zone, like let's just get on one time zone. We can all adjust our sleep schedules accordingly. But let's get into the glut of everything happening. As you say, I was going to make a joke, but then you said a bunch of other good stuff, but about you're like, there's not enough content, it's so day by day. And I'm like, and with that, the weekly recap, let's dive in.
The weekly
What
recap.
happened day by day this week? Excellent. Okay. Let's just start like macro picture. You track everything. What's going on this past week? Where are the markets? How are you feeling about things? What are you watching?
Well, the macro market at the moment is deeply uncertain, and there's a lot of chat about regulation. There's a lot of chat around the BlockFi $100 million SEC settlement and the implications of that for US traders. That one's going to run and run, I think. With NFTs, they had a great run when everything else was going down, and that had to come to an end at some point. I mean, you're looking at the CloneXs, the Azukis, the volume on those was immense, and it is dropped by about a half, and it just wasn't sustainable. What's interesting, though, is that the projects that were doing well don't seem to have dropped that much, which is kind of interesting. So again, I'm looking at Azukis and CloneXs and some of these new ones like Karafuru, the mutants, the Bored Apes, that haven't really dropped that much. People are kind of just going, yeah, I'm sticking where I am. And I don't know what that's reflecting exactly. Yeah. What do you use to track your NFTs? For tracking volume and things like that?
I use DApp Radar. I use Delphi Digital has a really good like weekly insights newsletter. It's not for like tracking volumes every day, but it will give you a nice summary of like top 10 projects by volume this past week. And it's sort of in a more condensed format, but I tend to use DApp Radar as a way to look. I had been using for a while. It wasn't as much a volume tracker, but it was a good floor price tracker. Zeneca put out like a nice spreadsheet that just tracked projects, new projects, old projects, like across the whole space. He stopped publishing that publicly, but I may still like bug him at some point for it kind of privately, because I really liked that cleanness of it. I don't know about you, but like I find with your DApp Radar, because of the wash trading now on LooksRare, like the data kind of gets messy if you're just looking at these like pure kind of volume aggregators. What do you use?
So I started using this tool called Watchtower. I was using WGMI for those basics because it was a lot easier to track everything that was going on with that in my own personal portfolio than it was with anything else. Watchtower is good though, because it basically allows you to set up dashboards. You can set up comparison boards. What have I got at the moment? I'm just going to have a look and see what my boards are. So I can basically track, for instance, blue chip listings. So I can check what's being listed in real time. But the boards are set up like, I don't know if you ever used TweetDeck. So you can in TweetDeck you could set up columns of like, you know, hashtag search terms you're looking for. So I can compare right now Doodles, CryptoPunks, Bored Apes, Cool Cats, CloneXs, Cyberconks,
nice.
all in the one dashboard in front of me, and I can see exactly who's listing it, how frequently they're listing, what they're listing for, and so I can tell you, there's a punk that's just been listed for 74 ETH, another one for 77, those in the last half hour, but there's, in the last 20 minutes or so, there's been at least 10 Doodles listed for around 15 to 22 ETH. Wow, Doodles is doing well. And so that this is, and it just gives you a sense of where people are pricing, where the kind of the thickness of the pricing is going. I mean,
that's really, send me a link to that. I had been using Nansen for a little while, but it was too overwhelming. I was like, there's too much happening.
Nansen. Oh my God, you're like, wow, and you're like, I'm never going to use this. Like, because I got too much else to do.
Exactly I was paying for it for a little while.
I know, and it's like I can see the data, and now I have to really think about the data. Whereas with this, I can just go, okay.
Yeah, that sounds much better. Send me the link. We'll link to it in the show notes for folks.
It is paid, but I did pay for it because whatever I can do to make my life a little bit easier is a good thing. So I know you were thinking about what's in the market, right? What's macro? For me, there's this severe kind of reimagining of what a blue chip is that has happened in the last 2 weeks. We've seen projects which have looked at what we've previously considered blue chips and said, well, we can really set our stall out and do something amazing. And I was tracking Artifact for 12 months before they even launched CloneX, but they are delivering something unique and weird and very uniquely them. And of course, they have the Nike partnership. What is that worth? Does that make them a blue chip? I think irrefutably, yes. Azuki is just like, how can you not like Azuki? There's something for everyone in there. They're delicious and weird. And what we're seeing is this kind of emergence of a manga flavor or manga styled images. And we kind of moved away from the cutie cartoony or the sort of the idiot cartoony stuff. And this is more of a style. Interestingly enough, I've been playing around with VTubing. Have you ever come across VTubing? No. So
tell me more.
VTubing is basically where you take your physical self and you replace it with something else, but it's an animation that tracks with you in real time. So you can have a manga character that
I've Zoomed with people who have done this.
So exactly. So VTubing is just doing what I do, or you do. but doing it as one of these characters, but doing it in real time. When you do the show
Yes.
later, I'll be VTubing.
Okay.
So
Okay, so I saw one on one of your live streams. Yeah.
yeah,
I
exactly,
saw that,
exactly. So
actually.
I
didn't
play
realize
around with
that's
this
what
stuff the whole
it's
time.
called.
So I have characters in Unreal Engine that I'm using, but I'm also using these VTubing things. So I'm trying to explore what this is. For me, VTubing is where PFPs come alive. And so I'm trying to understand how the technology works and how it will translate to PFPs. Because with Vroid Studio, which is a free piece of software, you can design a character that looks the way you want it to look, and it has the floppy hair and it has kind of weird eyes, but you have immense amounts of customization to do that with. And then the software to stream it to OBS and then out, it's all free, and it's really easy to set up and really, really easy to use. You can do things like you can have one of these, which this is a Magic Leap hand controller. It's a really old piece of technology, but with this, it's so janky. You strap it to your chest, and then it'll track your hand movements. So the really hard things to do,
Wow.
like tracking facial expression, head rotation, an iPhone can do all of that now. And like the software is sophisticated enough with facial recognition to do that. Tracking hands, really damn difficult. But with this thing, you can get some expression so your hands can be tracked as well. It's a little janky, but it's pretty amazing. That for me, the translation pipeline for people to take their avatar, whatever it is, and then
PFP.
be that in that way, that for me is where all of this suddenly makes sense. And if you look at these 3D models like Hey Prime, like CloneX's, like Meebits, to get them workable in the metaverse in any meaningful way is an absolute ball ache. Vroid Studio, VC Face, one of these, simple, it's half an hour's work. That for me is where suddenly all of this is going to explode, and you're going to have just any number of projects coming in offering solutions to enable you to do that. But once we can plug into those, that freeware, like it's all going to change.
That's fascinating. So your argument is that the way we start populating the metaverse is not actually like 3D running around renderings of Amoebit, for example, but rather us, as human beings sort of going into these spaces with this technology strapped up to us so that we actually just physically represent the character.
Well, I think you have two.
Is that what
I think
you're saying?
You have two. Well, it's probably three, but you have three essential problems that you have in terms of all of this. One is we want to represent ourselves as our character. And there's a certain amount of expression that comes with just being yourself. And if people want to be anonymous, they want to be able to emote as themselves. With these anime characters that I'm working with, they are full 3D. So you can rotate and you have the entire body. So this is a very lightweight file format called VRM that allows you to do that. And it's amazing. But none of these avatars really can work that way. You have to do kind of weird mechanics and go into mixer mode and then sort of download things. And it's not for everybody. But these simple kind of Vroid Studio versions, they really are. So that allows people to be themselves, but as the character. That's fun. Then you have all these social interactions and things like Decentraland where you can just go up and talk to somebody. You don't need full functionality of an avatar to do that. And then there's this idea of exploring a world as yourself and going and playing a game and just being there. You don't need a fully fleshed out avatar to do that. What's important there is the quality of the interactions and the quality of the gameplay itself. Like, what is the world like? And that you can have a very stripped down version of your avatar. The trick is going to be making it possible to be all of those things wherever you are in a format where the game can recognize, oh, okay, you've got this, now I'm going to give you this version of yourself. But that, for me, this simple ability to kind of emote and reflect your own kind of personality, but through this character in real time, for very little effort, it's amazing. Which is why I spend so much time looking into it, because I feel like it's just like months away from being integrated and fully ready to go.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm almost embarrassed that I haven't thought more about that, about these different forms and how they're going to show up in the metaverse. I've been on Zoom calls now. I was on a call with Deez, who I think is a non, or mostly a non, and that was the case for him. Like, he was, just fully a character as we zoomed, and I was like, God, this is so preferable to like you just being off screen with like a stupid little, image there in lieu of you, and it's really just like an audio call at that point.
G Money does it. He's got a punk. Like, he just turns up as like this dude from Puerto Rico. You're like, huh? It's so cool. And I think the reason people don't look at it is because VTubers like people think they're really dumb. And like they're generally like,
Yeah.
whoa, and it's all come from Japan. It seems very weird. The software itself, the UI is really badly designed. It just looks cheap and stupid. But if I think about like Gen Alpha or whatever they're called now, they don't care about any of that stuff. Like my daughter's wants to start YouTubing and doing Minecraft videos. Like I'm not letting her put her face on camera. Hell no. But she wants to design her own little manga character with pink hair and make it all girly. I'm like, yeah, go for it. And then we can do a little bit of voice changing and make her sound like an 80-year-old colonel. It'd be great. So that's,
What do you think? What are your thoughts on like MN, what's his name? FN Mecca, right? Like these like fully, these like music stars, these stars, like these kind of celebrities in this world that are like totally just AI. That feels very depressing to me. And I feel like the boomer in that situation being like, that'll never work. Like people want to connect with people. But like I'm probably wrong and I don't have kids, so I don't have like a reference point. Is that also going to be a huge thing, do you think?
Yes, it is. But the thing is, I don't think you need to look at it as anything depressing because it's fiction. And it's narrative. Like when you see a model on Instagram, is that real? No. When you see the way people present themselves, is that real? No. Like even this, none of this is real. I'm actually, 50 years old and covered in Doritos and stinking of Red Bull. That's that's the reality. No, I think it's all just entertainment. It's a piece of fiction. So whether it's an AI or not, there is an inherent intrigue in seeing how that story plays out and how realistic it is. And I think that's absolutely fine. When you watch Netflix, is that real? No, of course not. When you watch Tiger King, is it real? No.
Well,
so
sure. But there's a real human there. We won't go too deep in this. This is the recap episode. We'll do another like meta thoughts on the metaverse, but that is something I've been thinking more about.
Polygon is Ethereum's largest and most vibrant scaling solution to date. With millions of monthly users and all of the biggest DeFi apps, the Polygon ecosystem has turned into a blossoming metropolis of DeFi activity. Transactions on Polygon are quick and cheap, allowing users the freedom to achieve their DeFi goals, all while being economically anchored to Ethereum. But Polygon isn't just the proof-of-stake sidechain. The Polygon team is building a suite of scaling solutions, including Polygon Hermes, Maiden, Nightfall, and Zero, all with different design choices in order to be optimized for all possible crypto use cases. If you're a developer who wants to build on the Polygon ecosystem, go to the link in the show notes to check out their fantastic documentation. And if you're a user who just wants to experience fast and cheap DeFi, you can bridge over your ETH or other tokens and start playing around with any of the thousands of applications that are available on Polygon. Axie Infinity is a game universe filled with cute, fascinating little creatures called AXIEs that players can collect as pets. Players aim to battle, breed, collect, raise, and build kingdoms for their AXIEs. There are and will be many varied gaming experiences for AXIEs, many of them having players compete with each other using complex strategies and tactics to attain top rankings or be rewarded with coveted resources. Others will have them complete quests, defeat bosses, and unlock in-depth storylines. There are countless unique AXIEs that players can collect with varying body parts and experiences. The AXIE universe is a player-owned economy where the players can truly own, buy, sell, and trade the resources they earn in the game through skilled gameplay and contributions to the ecosystem. It's a digital nation where people come together globally with their AXIEs to play, earn, and live. Join the AXIE revolution at axieinfinity.com/bankless.
Okay, let's pull it back. I mean, it's funny you're mentioning these like VTubers and coming out of Japan, where a lot of this, I guess, originated. I mean, it's striking to me, and it's a little bit less so this past week, but like in the week prior, I think like half of the top 10 projects by volume all had like an Asian influence, and you still see this here. Azuki, obviously, you mentioned, still absolutely crushing it. Clone X obviously has like a sort of Asian inspired feel to it, and it's
Murakami.
Yeah, Murakami, thank you so much. Yeah, Takashi Murakami, who did the art there. And then Karafuru, which I think is such an interesting project. I think it's one you're somewhat interested in. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about this project in case it hasn't?
Well, I don't know a huge amount of it. I don't know a huge amount of it. It dropped onto my radar and I looked at it and went, this is wild. This kind of reminds me of arcade machines in Hong Kong. It had that kind of real, visceral, fun style to it. And I didn't end up minting any because when I saw them, I was like, I'm not sure if I want these. And I was also kind of still going through the Azuki collection and trying to determine what was the right course of action there. So, but I think they're really fun. But I think what you picked up on was that the collections tended to cluster around this anime. I'm sure it wasn't just that. It was just that people were noticing them, and I think that's because Azuki had done so well. People were noticing that. If you remember Oniforce last year, that project had that same kind of
Oniforce, the sevens,
right? So it's not like this is new, but I think Azuki's just put it on people's radars. But generally, what you will see happening is that suddenly all these projects will come out of the woodwork. Oh yeah, we can knock up 10,000 of these in no time, and it'll be fine. I don't think a lot of these projects were like that. I think they were quite considered and well designed, and there was a named artist in there and someone who'd been probably spending 3-4 months putting this together at least. So yeah, there just feels like there's a lot more quality. Now, there's a very big difference between having a nice web page and having 10,000 quality assets and having a quality project. They're sort of almost nothing to do with each other. So it remains to be seen how they evolve. But yes, that was definitely a trend.
Yeah, so Karafuru, I believe, comes from Indonesia. You were just telling me Indonesia Museum of Toys, which is interesting. It sort of has, institutional, probably not the right word, but like a certain amount of institutional backing that's interesting, like something with like a reputation to lose. It's sort of not people who came out of nowhere. I loved their website. Like their website is bright and colorful, and I looked at it, I think before Mint, but like I wasn't on their allow list, et cetera. And I was like, oh, I get why, like this is cool. And it doesn't feel, to your point, like I think what we have seen with a lot of these projects that have sprung up, they do feel considered. And I was like, this feels fully like a considered project. Let me ask you this, while Azuki's obviously still like reigning supreme, and you sort of started talking about this, but why has it done so well? Like, why has it been, one of the very few projects that was super hyped before reveal, stayed super hyped, just keeps climbing? Like, what do you think it is? Or in your
I think a couple of things happened. One of which was it had a good kind of birth story, and the narrative when you read the website, it was like, well, I can sort of understand where you're coming from with this, and it felt considered. I also think a lot of people overlooked it completely. They didn't even think about it because they weren't paying attention to it. And I know a lot of big collectors that I have the privilege of hanging around with from time to time suddenly saw it late. So they came in late and decided to kind of put some serious capital behind it. I know Sven, who we've had on the show a couple of times, loved them, just completely fell in love with them and was committed enough to go and buy like the number 2 ranked one. And I think that sent a big signal to the market. But I also think, again, it comes back to Clone X. Clone X has set a new standard in terms of what a mid-range, not Bored Apes or Punks project can be. And I think that's dragged everything else up with it, probably. That there's a realistic and sustainable price range around 15 to 20 ETH. And again, that's a lot of money. But some people, people can kind of just about get one of them, and that one actually might end up, being worth 50 to 60 at some point. And that, as an investment decision, is cool. But from a community perspective, like all of these projects have to deliver some kind of experience, some kind of journey for owners. And if they can't, then people will sell, and that's just the way it's going to be. But there's definitely this middle class of NFTs now, I think we can call it, that is thickening out, fairly significantly. And even if you don't call them blue chips, they're definitely contenders with some decent prospects for the future.
They're knocking on the door of blue chip status.
I hate that. Honestly, I don't even know. I don't even know why we call them blue chips. Like we have blue chip DeFi projects, blue chip NFT. What does that mean? It's like,
well, it's so funny too, because right, it's borrowed right from traditional finance world of like a blue chip company like a Coca-Cola, and you're like, yeah, because Coca-Cola has been here for like 100 years and isn't going anywhere. This thing got blue chip status. It's been 6 months. Like in some ways, it's too early to call anything blue chip in this space, except for maybe punks, right? But like blue chip companies are companies that have been around for, again, truly like 50 years and have a brand moat that's so incredibly untouchable that that doesn't get built even in 6 months or a year.
In that vein, there is one blue chip NFT project. Nobody ever talks about it. And that's the Damien Hirst Dots. Because Damien Hirst is an established artist, established brand. And that project was worth so much at one point. They were trading for like 45,000, 50,000 a pop. come down significantly since then. But that was a blue chip moment, a big brand that did really well with a kind of interesting dynamic. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen with those once the window for redeeming the NFT for the physical artwork starts to close and people go, ooh, what should I do? But like, that's fallen off everybody's radar. But that for me, that's blue chip. Bored Apes, yes, of course, punks.
I didn't.
But,
Yeah. They get the status. Yeah, I have friends who, I didn't get into the Damien Hirst drop, but I have friends in it. I was very jealous at the time. Okay, you said you were debating the Azuki, what the right course of action was. We'll move off of this in a moment, but what did you decide? Do you own an Azuki? Did you buy one? What's your?
No, I bought the beans, so I had some pre-reveals.
Okay.
Because I just kind of fell in love with the art that I saw.
Excellent.
And I think I'm allowed to.
You did well.
I think I'm allowed to. Well, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and my buying decisions these days tend to be around, well, what would she like? And if I put these in a vault for when she's 21, well, would that be a fun thing to do? So she and I kind of decide what we're going to do, and I don't tell her how much they're worth or how much they cost, and then to kind of just see what she might like, and then we kind of decide on something.
I think I've heard other people do this, and that's a decent strategy. That gets you probably cool cats. That gets you probably like a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, I don't really know, and it's like some of the decisions that I have made have turned out really well, but just coincidentally, they've also been things that the kids have really liked. So, and I have a 7-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, and like, I'm able to share that with them. I can't share anything about DeFi with them because they don't get it. But like this stuff, they're like, yeah. Daddy, have you got a new NFT? And I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Would you like to see it? So I got an Azuki that looks exactly like my daughter. And
I love it.
And it's very, very cute.
I think that's very cute. I feel like we'd be remiss to not mention Mfers as we're talking about the past week, because they sort of they've been the last 2 weeks. I feel like really kind of on the climb. But do you have any thoughts on Mfers? Do you own any Mfers?
No, I do not. I do not. But I'm aware of them, and I'm aware of Satoshi, and the story there is Punk OG. But yeah, I mean it's like another one of these cryptodes things. It's like it's just capturing a meme of a moment, of a sentiment, of a thing that represents how people are feeling. And I doubt it will last that long, honestly. Yeah. But I think it's interesting.
It has the CCO component. Yeah, it has the CCO piece, which people are, like, and I like it too. I've talked a lot about CCO on this show and sort of my feelings on that. But I was talking to David Hoffman last night because I was seeing some article that was like, MFers sort of like, out of nowhere started to do really well. And I was like, I think Bankless sort of started this because Ryan and David got very into the MFers and were like posting about it on Twitter. And that was like I feel like there were some other factors at play as well, but they definitely were like a precipitating moment. And so I was talking to David last night. I'm here in Denver for ETH Denver. And he was like, they're just so perfectly facetious. Like they're just like these little stick figures, and they sort of have the like, the middle finger thing, but then they have like a smile on their face, so they're also just like happy. And it's
funny hearing you talk about them like that.
Perfectly facetious.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you talking about that because I seem to remember earlier on that like David and Ryan were not so hot on NFTs. They were like, this is dumb.
Oh yeah.
So that's changed.
They're coming around. They're coming
around.
around. They bought Cool Cats. They bought MFers. Eventually, everyone, I mean, you can't, we will not be ignored, the NFT world. I mean, it's funny, right? Because they brought me on in part because they were like, we need a show about NFTs in the metaverse, solely focused on that, but it's not going to be us. And slowly but surely, like, they're definitely talking a lot about NFTs and getting kind of into it. Okay, the $23 million punk sale. Oh. That happened this week.
I've got so much to say on this one. You go first before the vein on my forehead pops open. Go ahead.
Don't have incredibly impressive thoughts. Deepak.eth, it was the chain protocol founder. He bought it for a crazy amount of money. Is it a marketing scheme? Truly, this is like, I want to hear your thoughts. I don't have anything brilliant on this.
Well, yes, Deepak Thaplyal, who is, as you rightly say, the CEO of Chain. Chain's an interesting company. They're one of the massive success stories of a time when there weren't that many massive success stories, and they bridged the gap between blockchain and big enterprises. They worked with Visa. They were bought by Stellar when Stellar was a big deal, and they've bought themselves back. But like in the course of that, that Deepak made a shit ton of cash, like a lot of money. And he's a really interesting guy. I want to hate him genuinely because of all of this NFT buying and the message it sends. But you hear him talk, he's really considered, really smart. And the chain message of what they're trying to do is, they're trying to change standards for humanity. They're trying to make a difference. And yet you see this. And in total, the guy has spent around 31 million on mutants and serums and this alien punk. I mean, it's astonishing. There's like $31 million. Like projects were raising that much at ICO in 2017, and it felt obscene at the time. This is how much money he spent. And the way that he raised the money was using compounds. So he took a loan out, went long ETH, and took a loan to pay for the punk. Interesting enough, this is the guy that bought the M3 serum for 1,500 ETH or so. He's now put it on sale for around 21 million. And like punk bought for 23 million. Now the serum's going on sale for 20. There's a bit of balancing going on there. Like who's going to pay 21 million for that M3 serum? Nobody. I'm sorry, it's not worth that much. I just can't figure it out. So there's a Forbes article about him that came out about 4 days ago. And in it, he talks about 3 specific things that founders in cryptocurrency should think about. And one of them is like narrowing down your niche. One of them is about, making sure you're in it for the long run. And the other one is be more visible. Like he said, the biggest challenge we have right now is to be more visible. I'm like, dude, you've just done that because I'm now talking about you. And like I said, I want to hate him. But I think, honestly, when you see his tweet threads and you see everything else, he's very considered. I keep using that word, but like I respect people who are considered and don't just go, I bought this thing and it's fucking amazing. And like there's, I don't know. I'm very conflicted about it.
Okay, so your tension is partly the conspicuous consumption thing and the sort of, I guess you could call it kind of reckless way in which he's going about it. I mean, like I would tell everybody, don't ever borrow money. Basically, go leverage yourself like that. A guy like this who's got, I'm sure, infinity money, it doesn't really matter. But so you're kind of chafe against the conspicuous consumption and the absurdity of these prices because they are just absurd at a certain point. But you like that he's considered, and clearly this is a marketing move, right? Like he is just trying to be. Obviously this is his way of being seen, and it's working. Am I capturing your feelings on this?
Yes.
Well?
So if your mission is to do some good in the world, but everyone's ignoring you, then you need to be seen, and then you can do some good in the world.
Yeah.
And Charlie Munger came out with a quote today. It's like cryptocurrency traders are only in it to get rich for themselves without doing anything good for humanity. And I suspect that most of them are, but I think there's also a bunch of them that like they'll get rich quick and then they'll do something about it. And I want to give Deepak at least the chance to do that and try to do that. But then my wife's a teacher. I'm like, how much money does a teacher need? And how many teachers could you get for 31 million? I don't even know the answer to that question, but that's what's at the back of my head. Like the education suffers, but these guys are getting rich. It doesn't add up for me. And at the moment, there's so much scrutiny on this space, and particularly NFTs, and so much negative pressure from particularly the gaming world, but then by extension, the metaverse world. I talked to companies that are building in the metaverse from the gaming side, like Ubisoft, for instance. Massive amount of pushback on Ubisoft for proposing NFTs as part of their publishing strategy, and that it's getting really, really irate and unpleasant. It's getting ugly, and this doesn't help. It just reinforces.
No, it absolutely is. It's the wrong image to be putting out to call it the mainstream, because I love Charlie Munger. I've been to a Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting. Warren Buffett and Charlie, as like a 27-year-old woman, I have like a weird amount of like love and obsession for both those two humans. So I understand. I mean, they weren't into tech either, right? Like this is obviously the kind of thing they would absolutely hate. But yeah, I think I think you're right. I also, though, I'm like in the long term, it'll wash itself out. Like, in the long term, we're here to stay. This is the bubbly part. There'll be a huge collapse at some point, and it'll find sort of an equilibrium. So in the short term, we're getting a lot of bad press, and this shit doesn't help it. In the long term, I think it won't matter.
Well,
and
it's interesting.
It's the attention economy, man. Like,
yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think you're right and you're wrong. So you have these increasing kind of levels of category of types of coin, types of project. It used to be it was Bitcoin, shitcoins, and the two were kind of correlated and sort of went against each other, but it's sort of they went as one group. NFTs are proving that they don't want to play by those rules. And DeFi also has its own weird cycles. But within NFTs, of course, there are just an enormous number of different types of application of NFT. It's not as simple as it being a shitcoin. NFT, I mean, at the end of the day, it's nothing to do with art. It's just a simple wrapper for information that can be provably unique on the blockchain. That's it. So what an NFT is and where it wants to be can be whatever it wants. And we've talked about on Defiant this idea of BTC resistance, and it's not necessarily resistance to maximalism or anything else. It's more about if BTC takes a shit, does this category take a shit as well? Stablecoins do not, on the whole. They sometimes depeg, but only mildly. NFTs are starting to form some kind of cultural...
But they're starting to decouple.
Yeah, but it's cultural the way they're doing it. So if you watch a TV show, you don't care what Bitcoin's doing. And if your TV show has these characters that you love, but they also happen to be NFTs, then why would you care what Bitcoin's doing? So there's this cultural resistance to the movements of BTC that I'm keeping an eye on. It's just a theory at this stage. But anything that's BTC resistant, I'm interested in, because it means a bear market will not affect it as badly as everything else. So I don't know anymore. I think, we always go, there'll be a big bear market. And there will be for Bitcoin and altcoins because it's the 4-year cycle. It's what happens. But for everything else, I don't know. But I'm excited to find out.
Well, and yeah, we're on this ride. I think where my head was going was more... Right now, we do have an image problem to the outside world, right? Like, we're obviously just getting... The world kind of hates NFT people, and I totally understand why. And they hate us in part because they see these things, like what Deepak has done, and they're like, 23... Like, that is so obscene. Like, all the problems in the world, and you're putting $23 million on this, like, stupid JPEG. That, to me... is a short-term narrative problem that we should do what we can to fix, right? And we should tell other stories, and you can maybe judge Deepak for helping to reinforce that narrative. But that, to me, is going to be a short-term narrative, because in the macro sense. Because at some point, I think your mortgage will be an NFT, and your Beyonce concert ticket will be an NFT, and our perception of what these things are in the broader world inevitably will expand. I mean, I don't know, maybe we won't be calling them NFTs at that point. So maybe, the most of the world, they'll be called something else and they won't even realize it's an NFT. But I think in terms of that image issue, inevitably the tech becomes ubiquitous enough that, again, it's sort of like, I mean, not that tech doesn't have an image issue, right? But but it's sort of like the internet boom. Like, internet doesn't have an image issue at this point. I don't know if it did at one, because it's just so ubiquitous.
Well, what was interesting was the whole Super Bowl thing. So many crypto companies were there.
Yeah.
And I did a podcast just yesterday where one of the co-hosts said, wow, it was really amazing. You had these 2 ape owners on stage. Well, yeah, they were rappers. But you don't call them Tesla owners because they own Teslas. We do call them ape owners, though. I thought that was really odd. It's like, wow, this human owns an ape. And of course, they have these apes as their Twitter avatars. And that is more of a thing than owning a Tesla. But it's just a possession, But we have kind of come to this point where we're defining it as this thing. And it's bizarre. And I wonder how long that's going to continue.
Well, do you think... Yeah. Do you think, though... that's the people who are in this space. We're so excited when the mainstream recognizes us, right? And that we feel like we're finally Trojan horsing people, so to speak. Like, again, the comparison to the internet. If it was like, hey, there's 2 people up on stage who both use like broadcast.com or, like whatever it was that like, do you think it's really just that, or there is something more fundamental because NFTs are tied to culture where like, we will forevermore like associate people with the NFTs we've seen them have?
Well, I can compare it to 2017, where Bitcoin suddenly kind of took off again. There were quite a few things that were interesting about that time. First, SegWit got switched on, and that sort of opened this door to the possibility of Bitcoin becoming a lot faster and a lot cheaper to use. As it turns out, it didn't really go down that way. But suddenly everyone was interested in Bitcoin and what Bitcoin could be. So then we had the ICO craze, and there was literally everything had a token. Everything could be tokenized. And there was this massive excitement about that. And then you started to see this idea of mass adoption. Like who's going to be mass adopting this stuff? It turned out to be a complete smoke show, whatever you want to call it. But every little moment where somebody, there was Bitcoin advertised at a boxing match, Digibyte launched a Minecraft server. Like everyone was like, oh my God, it's real. It's happening, everyone. It's now. And then 4 years later, yeah, this is all shit. It's, NFTs, I feel like they have more graspable, tangible ownership value to people than a shitcoin. And it's a lot more fun to own them than it is to own and trade shitcoins. And it's a lot harder to sell them. So people generally hodl because they can't get rid of them in a hurry if they need to. So again, speculation, but I feel like we're just going to have to see. And more than ever, I feel like the NFT space, as vast as it is just making its own rules up now. And I'm excited by that because it's the way it should be.
Absolutely, yeah. We've talked on this podcast a couple of times about the kind of decoupling. Are we no longer really pegged to the Bitcoin and that sort of market in terms of what happens here?
Everyone is talking about the metaverse these days, and we're all still trying to figure out what it actually is, because everyone is looking for how to get exposure to it. That is why a metaverse index fund is so important, because in such a young market, an index can give you broad exposure to all the various players who are building out all these digital worlds that will ultimately become the metaverse. And that's why you should check out the Metaverse Index from the Index Co-op. The Metaverse Index gives you simple, easy, and safe one-click exposure to the emerging open metaverse trend. The MVI Index contains some of the biggest metaverse projects out there, including AXIE Infinity, Decentraland, Illuvium, and more. So join thousands of holders who have already trusted nearly $50 million to the MVI Index. And if you buy $500 of MVI on the Dharma app, you can receive $50 worth of ETH on the Polygon network. There's a link in the show notes for you to click so you can get started on your journey into the metaverse. Unstoppable Domains is the #1 provider of NFT domains. With domains ending in .crypto, .x, or .nft, Unstoppable Domains lets you replace your long, complex wallet address with a human-readable address. Using Unstoppable, you can verify the ownership over your NFTs, log into Web3 apps, and join tens of thousands of people using them as their Twitter usernames. With Unstoppable Domains, you can have all of your crypto addresses registered to one single domain. So it doesn't matter where crypto payments are coming from or where they're going. By registering all of your crypto addresses to your Unstoppable domain, all of that is taken care of in the back end. Better yet, with Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about gas costs or renewal fees because you own it. Buy your domain and you can show it off as your new Twitter username. So you can get your name for as low as $5 at unstoppabledomains.com.
Okay, another topic. I think you would want to talk about this. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. I have a couple on this X2Y2 marketplace. Want to give folks sort of on an overview there and your thoughts. This is another new NFT marketplace that sort of springing up, trying to be truly very community owned, decentralized.
Well, I think you've summed it up there. Looks Rare proved that the Vampire model, which famously SushiSwap vampired Uniswap.
Yep.
And so X2Y2 are trying to do the same thing. I think it was go and list 50 NFTs or NFTs from 5 different collections and you'll be eligible for an airdrop. As it turns out, the airdrop wasn't that valuable, and the airdrop itself, the mechanism was problematic, so they had to pause it. But there were people there was like 7% of the people who were eligible were still able to stake, even though the airdrop itself was paused. And there have been a few different problems with it. I actually, when I looked at the X2Y2 site, I actually preferred it to Looks Rare. It felt very much like an OpenSea type experience. It was very, very much easier to search for the items that you wanted to find. Looks Rare was it was a sexy airdrop, right? And then the WETH rewards for everything else. Yeah. It was just it was a fun thing. But then, you get the other side of it, which is, the team dumping their WETH and not their tokens. Oh, that's a new one. So, yeah, there's no doubt that OpenSea is not the greatest marketplace in the world. It is difficult to navigate around. It always goes down. But it is the best that we have. And if you're going to disrupt it, you need to bring your A game. And it's fine to give teams an opportunity to get up to speed and get going. And you need to kind of scale in and the vampire attack is a good way to do it. But once the volume drops off or the wash trading goes away, then what have you got left,
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're seeing for folks who haven't been tracking this. So Looks Rare volume was massive, but it's really been based on the wash trading, and so there's a ton of volume, but there's actually not a ton, like the daily active users are kind of far below what OpenSea has. And you had, I think it was last week, exactly, they halved the rewards you get, right? They're doing this halving where like the rewards you get for trading on there are becoming less and less, and you have the rewards and the activity drops quite precipitously. So it does seem like they and there's plenty of time left, but these new marketplaces who are trying this vampire attack and trying to just steal OpenSea users, so far hasn't proved to be a lasting.
No, and
impact.
we're all just kind of waiting for the Coinbase NFT marketplace. Is that coming along? Like, what were we looking at? Someone else is setting up an NFT marketplace. I sent you a link to it. Who was it?
The New York Stock Exchange.
The New York Stock Exchange. Yes. What are they going to be selling as NFTs? Well, it won't be art, probably. It'll probably be financial positions or some kind of derivative that they can represent as an NFT. That makes more sense to me than it being JPEGs. Because
I mean, that's fascinating. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but like I didn't even know, is the New York Stock Exchange like privately owned? I didn't even. I would think of it as like. Well, that sounds to me like the government is setting up a marketplace. Like that's
a story
wild.
for another day, because I haven't done enough homework on it, so I would look foolish if I tried to comment on it. But yeah, the New York Stock Exchange does some strange things from time to time. But that's definitely something to take notice of. But I think the Coinbase NFT, if they eventually even get it off the ground, because who knows what is poking around in their books at the moment. They've just announced they're hiring 2,000 new staff this year. Do you know how many staff they have?
The New York Stock Exchange.
They've got about 2,100 staff at present. They're hiring 2,000 more this year.
They're doubling their staff.
They're doubling their staff.
Oh, wow. There's an interesting story there. I'll dig more into this because I actually am fascinated. What is going? Do you know what's going on?
No, I know. You know exactly what's going on. It's go time. That level of expansion is very reminiscent of Facebook. This extraordinary, just the world is now opening up. And it's every single person on the planet is a potential customer. That's the Coinbase narrative right now. And so the VCs and whoever's advising them is just like, that's where they're pushing them. You can feel the same thing.
This is like a Robinhood thing? Like the number of people now trading stocks is just ballooned because you have... I would call it
well, there's an interesting stat that came out yesterday, which was the number of people who hold crypto is higher than the number of people who have a savings account in the US. It's like 24% to 23%, something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, this is why the US government is just gargling its own teeth trying to figure out what to do with it, because they're behind both China and India now. Russia's going to make a move at some point. So, there's going to be an international kind of arms race for stable coins and these kind of things, and then that's all going to bleed into these other products, and the US is going, but we don't know how to regulate it. Well, what? And then it becomes a partisan debate and all these kind of things. You're in the Yang gang. All this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know. Well, I know. I should say, because this is coming out tomorrow, so I have to plug the fact that Andrew Yang announced today Lobby 3. This is a project I've been helping him work on, and it's really about building out a lobbying infrastructure for Web3, for the people of Web3. There's sort of industry lobbyists out there. There are other groups that are doing great work as well. So this is intended to complement the work of groups like the Blockchain Association and really taking a anti-poverty stance and using that, talking to sort of our congressional representatives about the anti-poverty benefits of crypto and talking about that, bringing the unbanked or underbanked into a financial system. I mean, that's fascinating to know that you have more people holding crypto than have savings accounts, and really using that as the story and the language we use as we approach folks in Congress. So lobby3.io, gotta get people to go check that out as we're talking about the regulatory risk and
well, I think you've
DC and governments everywhere trying to figure this out.
I think what you just said there, the language we use, it's way harder than you think. It's really hard to detoxify crypto. The moment you mention a token or a coin or anything like that, you're just in this world where it's very, very difficult to wipe the stink off. And so the communications question here, NFTs have the same issue right now. Like you just have this patina of nastiness and grime around everything that we're doing. that requires a very light touch in terms of how you communicate it. It's a really tough challenge. And so I think what Andrew's trying to do is gather together people who can take that challenge on, and also just really attempt to bridge the gap in knowledge that there is, because the information asymmetry is insane. So I'm not surprised that people are having a hard time with it, but got to move fast. And Congress just doesn't move fast.
If you're not, well, and it's also if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? Like if Web3 doesn't really make an effort to educate lawmakers around this in an effective way, like we're just going to continue to be their piggy bank, right? Like I think that's what I've said this, but I think that's what we saw with the infrastructure bill this past summer, right? Where that was sort of a disaster, and it was really like the broker definition made no sense, but it was born out of like, hey, we have this huge spending bill. Where can we get money for it? I don't know. Crypto's got a lot of money sloshing around. Like that's going to be the piggy bank, and I think that's what you'll continue to see if folks don't actually understand what's happening here. It's just bad regulation. Partly born out of just disliking crypto and the whole thing, but also born out of like there's a lot of money. We want that money to pay for the stuff we want. So, okay, a couple other things here to maybe talk about. I don't know. We can pick our favorites. We sort of talked about Super Bowl commercial takes. Disney hired Mike White, sort of tech exec, to lead their metaverse strategy. He's at a very senior level. I might do a whole little mini episode about this. John Rogers, who's been on this podcast, keeps me up to date on what all like the big media companies are doing on this front, and has very smart, as he always does, analysis on like what that means about all their, which companies basically are hiring a senior person to work on this versus the people who are like the companies that like have an intern, like thinking about it. And he seems to be very bullish on this move by Disney because it's somebody in LA. He has a whole, again, I'll maybe bring him on. Don't know if you have thoughts about that, but a sign that Disney really understands what's happening here.
Well, I mean, you have to respect Disney. They are incredible at identifying talent and then bringing that talent into the Disney universe. You may feel that it's a juggernaut that is so commercially driven that it's almost impossible to ignore. But you have Marvel, you have Pixar, you have the Star Wars universe. That's all Disney. Like they build theme parks. If that's not a company that is literally tailor-made for this extraordinary, exotic vision of the metaverse that we have, then who is? You may want to resist that and go somewhere else, but like I think a lot of people enjoy just watching Disney product or being in touch with the Disney brand. It's extraordinary how they managed to evolve. They are a deeply respectable company, and the amount of talent that's working there is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. From someone that's made films for half my life, it's like so much of the stuff that I use now is born out of people who worked for Disney. It's I have a lot more confidence that they can pull a metaverse off than Meta, than the artist formerly known as Facebook.
Yeah. The artist. I know. I don't think it was with you, but I was listening to something yesterday where it was somebody making that point. Like Facebook has innovated so little. True, like they've bought innovative companies, but their actual capacity to innovate since their kind of initial product has been so low. The idea that they are going to tackle one of the most like creatively interesting and challenging problems of our time and do it well and win that race feels very low.
Disney, of course, their biggest innovation,
the opposite of that.
Their biggest innovation was designing the algorithm that tapped the social graph. And understanding how valuable that social graph was. I noticed actually you put Lens Protocol on the roster here, and Lens is the decentralized version of a social graph that you can then build social applications on top of. I'm fascinated by this. I think it's a really interesting idea, and it's sort of the tree that spreads out is all NFT based, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, but it's this idea that a comment could be an NFT, could be a valuable thing if you write it well and you're a good commenter. And then that NFT could then, in the future, become collateral to get a loan because you write great comments. I mean, this is wild. And this is like when people talk about people talk about the over-financialization of everything. I agree. But then this like your reputation as someone that comments thoughtfully or badly maybe as well could then become, you know, a rationale for you to you know, be eligible for a house. Like what? What? It's so wild.
Well, and gosh, I've said this on a couple of podcasts now, I think back to back. So I apologize if folks are getting sick of hearing me say this, but there's the financialization of everything argument. And the flip side of that is suddenly now people with all sorts of different talents and ideas and whatever can make money off of a thing that historically they couldn't, right? Like potentially you're good at spotting the new up and coming young artist. Like, you know, like there's a world where you're better at that than Goldman Sachs, and you can actually compete on that frontier in a way that now, of course, Goldman will end up just hiring. But the point is, like, the flip side of the financialization of everything is, wow, now people can make money doing so many things that historically were not monetarily valuable. And I think that's actually a really beautiful thing. It ties to this anti-poverty piece, which is like, how can we get, you know, how can folks earn a living doing things that previously were really undervalued or unvalued from a market sense? Lens, I want to quickly get people to go check that out, lens.dev. I think this is fascinating. I read through a ton of their documentation and my brain still is exploding from it. I think SuperMassive gives a good overview there.
It's not even that hard to understand because at the moment, basically, it's a set of tools. And what those tools are designed to do is take each piece of a social experience and turn it into something that can be tracked, can be verified, and can be transparent on a blockchain. And it's actually a very elegant piece of design to do that, but nothing's built there yet. It's literally just a protocol.
Well, that's the problem. There's no front end, right? So like I can understand it conceptually of like, you have a profile and that profile is an NFT, and then folks comment and that engagement can potentially be an NFT. But like how this will, I'm like, I need to play with it, you know, like I need to be able to go on somewhere and like watch it play out to really kind of have it sink in. But
I think it's basically
very,
very simple. If you think about it in terms of a PC that you would build, your PC it has a keyboard, it has a mouse, it has a screen. You can add more things to that PC to make it more valuable and make it work better for you. And you can swap them in and swap them out. It feels a lot more like that. And over time, you build up a kind of an understanding of your machine, but it really is, it's about the reputation that you have and then different touch points being able to allow different people who might not have the skills that you have to be a part of your journey with you. But then because the social graph is transparent, it'll allow anyone to see where the heat map is, where the activity is. But it also might be able to show people where there isn't anything and the community's underserved, and then start to build things that might serve the community and then you know, do a good job of drawing them there. The flip side of this is it could be really easily gamed. So you'd have to figure out, you know, where is the gaming going on, and you know, where is the illicit activity going on. But the great thing about the graph being open is that you'd be able to have a geoanalytics style, you know, overview of everything. And then you would have armchair forensic detectives who would be able to just say, well, this is happening. And you'd have the Zach expertise of the space that would pop up, and problems would get spotted a lot quicker. I think that's one of the things that's not talked about enough in this space is the citizen policing of the space that goes on. Like people spot problems fast, they alert problems fast, and then they sort them out. And like the weird thing about the NFT space is that it amplifies all the worst aspects of humanity, but it also amplifies all the best parts. But we never talk about that. You know, if someone has their wallet hacked, like invariably members of the community offer to make them whole again or give them something, or they rally around. Nobody ever talks about that. But that's part of that experience as well, as much as the hacks and the rugs are. We just talk about the rugs more because they hurt more. But, you know, it amplifies the good as well as the bad. And here endeth the rant.
Yeah. When I'm yeah, beautiful rant. I'm also excited by, and you know, the idea of sort of transferable reputation and what that can do. Of course, I think Balaji Srinivasan talks about this quite a bit, right? But like, and others, but you know, you are on Twitter and you're big, but that means nothing for your Instagram, which means, you know, you have to start from scratch anytime you want to create new content on a new platform. And if you have this transferable reputation where it's an open social graph and, you know, you can move from sort of one style of platform to another with that reputation transferred, that's a exciting thing. And it means that creatives can dabble in, you know, being a wordsmith on Twitter and starting a YouTube channel and, you know, all these things. And it's, and that reputation follows you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
which is cool.
Our journey in at the moment, we're filmmakers that cover DeFi and everything else, and we try and add the filmmaker creator component to what we do. We're trying to do it more and more, and we're on this really bananas journey into Unreal Engine and producing virtually. That is hard. I mean, that is seriously hard. And so we want to share that journey and help other people kind of jump into that journey as well. And that's why we're talking about the VTubing and this kind of thing. But like our niche where we are has nothing to do with that. And yet that's what we're doing. So we want to be able to share that, but it means a new channel, and then we'd have to start from scratch. And like, I want to be present on Instagram because I know that what we do is very visual and it would make sense on Instagram. I don't have time for that. It's just impossible. So
I totally agree. I'm like, I feel like I can hardly handle my one social channel, which is primarily Twitter. I would love to be doing more on Instagram, but I'm like, the overwhelm I feel at having to like dedicate to another channel.
Yeah, it's not possible.
Is kind of profound.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the exciting thing about where we are at the moment. There are these tools that are growing up. They're kind of emergent at the moment, but they all tie back into these PFPs, these NFTs, and the ability to use them. Like with Fluff World, you've got these burrows. I'm really excited to try out a burrow and like download the model or put a fluff suit on and actually pilot the fluff for real. We're just starting to get to the point. You'll see when you see the promo for the NFT show we're doing later, what we've managed to accomplish today in Unreal Engine. God, it was blood, sweat, and tears, but it was just starting to get there. It's our version of the Metaverse, and we control it, and we have basically the version of a holodeck here. But if we can share that with people and show it to them and say, well, this is where we could be going, and it's really hard, but we're going to try and see what we can do with it, then that's fun. But again, it's all entertainment. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, I think we made it through most of this. We're at the hour mark. I don't know if you have. I don't want to take up more time than you have to give. I'm also aware that I think my AirPods are dying.
Well, no, I think just one last thing. We should just talk about what are we excited about coming up, because I have two projects that I think are worthy of a mention.
Yes, great.
One of them is Cyber Brokers from Josie Bodini. So Josie's a really renowned pioneer crypto artist who's been a little bit quiet of late, but she's been putting together this, I hate to call it a peer-to-peer project, but it will have that element to it. There's a whole story behind it, but it's all cyberpunk, and the characters are really interesting, and there's a lot of digital fashion involved. We're going to be interviewing her later on today, but she's just someone who's got so much respect from all corners of the community in terms of what she's done in the space, and everyone's really excited to see what that's going to be. The other one I'm really excited about is the AXIE-verse. So this is Michael Johnson, this is Aku, and he's doing a whole bunch of PFPs as well. But the story behind that, he was a former professional baseball player, but it's kids of color going to space. It's a beautiful story, and I just think it's one of those projects that I really don't mind telling people about. It doesn't make me feel dirty. It's a good one. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to the Parallel pack drop, which I've mentioned before. I think it's a week or so away, February 26th. I don't own any Parallel cards, and every time I go to buy them on a secondary, I just get overwhelmed by where do I even start? So I feel like the pack drop is where I'm hoping to start. We'll see if I get one.
There's the SE versions. There's the SE versions of the regular versions, and there's
the para sets, and there's 6 different, and I once was trying to and I was like, oh God. And then there's the different parallels themselves, and I'm like, it's too
and
much,
they're gorgeous. They're all gorgeous. So you're like, oh,
they're gorgeous. I know. So I'm like, do I just buy the cheapest ones just to get myself in the ecosystem? I don't know, whatever, because they're all cool.
Yeah,
but,
we talked to them a while back about doing a fictional story that would be set in the parallel universe that we'd build in Unreal Engine, and then to have a whole story.
Cool.
We're not quite there yet, but I think by the summer we might be ready to take that on, which would be really fun.
That there's such a meld there with your brand and how you guys do things so artistically, and their brand and their artistry. That makes sense and would be very cool. I look forward to that hopefully happening this summer. Timepieces are in their burn phase. I've kind of talked about this. I'm a fan of this latest drop from Time. You can basically you could mint an initial timepiece, which has these slices of time, it was called, and then you can burn it to get an artist's work of a time cover. I'm going to burn mine and get a time cover, but I haven't done it yet. So that's sort of we're in that phase now, which I'm looking forward to. And then there's this project called Ragnarok Meta. I'll link to it for folks. This is very much not financial advice. Like, there's more due diligence I want to do on this, but it has me intrigued. I like their webpage, which is always like a marker for me. That's how I felt about Karafuru. You know, I just get good vibes from the page. I think the team has put out a number of like Medium posts that I thought have been thoughtful. It's a play to earn game. It's P2E, but it's very much it's a game, and I'm intrigued. And they're minting, I think they said now it's early March. I think they pushed back their mint date. And I think it's interesting. So that's the other one that I again have to do more diligence on. That's like on my list of kind of track it more closely, but I'm throwing it out there for folks. If anybody else wants to look into it and give thoughts, truly, this is like, I'm not telling anybody to buy this project. It could end up to be terrible, but it has me intrigued.
Well, you can go and play the game already. So it's like a...
Well, you can play, yeah. That's like on their homepage. Yeah. You can play like the early version of the game, which I liked. I liked that like we already have a proof of concept thing. It's not the full game, but it's like you can go and they have like, you know, kind of fun music on the homepage there. I don't even have it pulled up.
Yeah, no, I was playing it before we got on, and it was like, oh well, this is fun. I mean, it's pretty basic, but
right?
It's
super basic. But the fact that they have something and it gave me that fun feeling inside of like, oh, I kind of like this vibe, felt to me like always a good sign.
Yeah, we had a project on called Pixel World, I think, a few weeks back, and it was the same kind of vibe. And we had them on the stream, and it was just like, there was just a mob, boom. It was just like the whole screen was filled with people going. I was like, welcome to 2022, everyone. The post-COVID face of humanity in all its glory. Well, there you go.
Play to...
That kind of...
I also want to correct. I don't know if it's play to earn, and I think I may fuck that up. It's like one of these MMORPG
If it isn't,
games.
it will be, because everything will be.
I know, exactly. I just assume everything building in this space is obviously play to earn.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I wanted to end on just the 6 new company values which Mark Zuckerberg has outlined in a corporate all-hands meeting for the former Facebook. In short, the 6 new principles are: move fast. Well, that was what they always say, but it's move fast and break things. Focus on long-term impact. Build awesome things. Live in the future. Be direct and respect your colleagues. Number 6 is the best one. Meta mates me. So, like, who comes up with this stuff? It's like, hey, listen, guys. Build awesome things. Yeah? Awesome.
Yeah.
Not amazing, but
also,
awesome. Because like anyone can understand the word awesome.
Move fast is number 1, which is so telling. Like, you know, when you first start reading this list, you assume it's like not about how you are treating each other. Because like if it were, like, you know, just out of wanting to save face, like the number 1 thing is like treat everybody with respect or whatever. But he puts that. They actually do put that there, but it's number 5. Yeah.
Like his lizard puppet is doing a good job there. But the last one, meta mates me. You can just see them like writing it on the whiteboard, going, ooh.
Yeah, feeling good about it.
Feeling a bit of wordplay today. Anyone want to go with me? Meta, me too. No, not me too. Let's stay away from that. Yeah. Meta mates, playmates. Yeah, mate. Oh, mate. I mean, come on.
Mate. We've got the alliteration.
Come on. So some marketing consultancy somewhere earned a lot of money for facilitating that session, and I hope they got paid well. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's hilarious. SuperMassive, this was so fun. Thank you for coming on. We'll do this again. Always preferable to me sitting alone in a room doing these. So
I feel you.
I really appreciate you making the time. I know you get it. And we're going to be on your show later today.
Absolutely. We're doing a crossover event, people. This is the way the world works. This is our own mini metaverse of DeFi branded news agencies. Yes. Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me. It was good fun, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Of course. Would love it. Cool. All right, folks. We'll see you next week.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.